Hello, one out there. It's Smash Boop here, and a new D-Files episode. The Hillbilly is who I'm covering. This guy is so strange. I guess he's strange. He can be pretty powerful. However, as they do every 3 months, the devs of this game decide that they're gonna rework a killer. Every 3 months or so, in between actual new content updates. It's a long ass time. So they've reworked some killers before. They've reworked the nurse, they've reworked the doctor, they've reworked the nightmare, and most recently they not only updated the hillbilly, they also updated Leatherface the cannibal, who I will get to later. Before the balance update, I guess I'll say, he was a top 3 killer. The 3rd best killer in the game, in my opinion. Now he's a lot more, honestly he's a lot more fun, but he's not as OP. And he was very simple to use, which made him very deadly. So I'll get to what I mean by that later. Let's get into his lore. The son of wealthy landowners, Max and Evelyn Thompson, this unnamed boy was an unwanted child born to savage parents. Hideously disfigured, he was shed away from society. So ashamed they were of their son, they bricked him into a room and fed him through a hole in the wall. When the boy escaped, he took his revenge, savagely and terribly slaughtering the parents who had tortured him instead of raising him. After the deed was done, he continued to live his life at the farm, taking out his deranged violence on the animals that were allowed to run free. As he finally broke free from his shackles, he ran through the cornfields, chasing and slaughtering whatever he could find. They never found the bodies of Max and Evelyn, but they did find tortured and disemboweled animals all over the farm. Coldwind Farm was quickly settled and the land split up and sold off. There was never a buyer for the farmhouse. Perhaps the sound of a chainsaw you could hear through those hot summer nights. So, yeah, a simple backstory. His parents were assholes, essentially, and turned him into a deranged killer. And as you can see right here, he looks gross as all hell. So, getting into his perks. Now, his perks are a pretty good three set of perks. Enduring. You are resilient to pain. You reduce the duration of pallet stuns by 40%. This is good for those brute force killers, like this guy, or the Trapper. Just about any brute force killer, really, the Wraith especially, really benefits from these. Pretty much any killer that eats pallets. And I believe at the max version of this, it's 50%, which means you can get hit by it, and it will hardly stun you at all, and you can get right back into the chase. I would rate this a solid A-. Lightborn. Unlike the other beasts of the fog, you have adapted to light. You are immune to blindness caused by flashlights and firecrackers. Survivors that attempt blinding you will have their aura revealed for 6 seconds. This is his one perk. I'd rate it a B-. This is a very situational perk. You have to pay attention in the lobby whenever you get to see the survivors. If you see they're carrying flashlights, this might not be a bad idea to put on. However, it's going to be near useless if no one brings flashlights. Tinkerer. When a generator is repaired to 70% repair progress, it triggers a loud noise notification, and you are granted the undetectable status effect for 12 seconds. This used to be so much worse, because it actually would only work at 85% repair and 6 seconds of undetectable, which is nothing. They buffed it in the recent update, and it's so much better now. It is so much better. It's so good for sneaking up on people all the way across the map. This works especially well with this character, and I will get to why. This is also A-. Alright, getting into his power, it's simply called Chainsaw. Press and hold the power button to break into a chainsaw sprint. Survivors hit during the chainsaw sprint are instantly put into the dying state. Each chainsaw action, starting, revving, or the chainsaw sprint itself, will cause overheat to increase. When the overheat meter is filled, the chainsaw cannot be used until it is fully cooled down. Reaching the heat capacity will not interrupt an ongoing chainsaw sprint. The overheat meter decreases when the chainsaw is not in use. The whole overheat mechanic was not, before this update, this is the whole part of the balance change, because he was so OP before. Simply because there was no overheat. You could go endlessly, you could rev endlessly, and there would be no repercussion to it. With the overheat mechanic, now you have to be careful about when you want to use your chainsaw. This is the whole bread and butter. Whenever you're doing the chainsaw sprint, you actually move, I believe, at 250% movement speed. Compared to the usual 4.6 meters, which is 115%, you run nearly twice as fast. That is so good. He's still a good killer, you just gotta figure out how to use him. Alright, getting into his loadout. His add-ons. His add-ons actually are one of the few killers that actually makes sense. His best add-on is the iridescent add-on, the Apex Muffler. Whenever a masterfully crafted chainsaw muffler that outperforms all others. Chainsaw is silent for survivors outside the terror radius, meaning normally you are able to hear the chainsaw from 64 meters away. The Hillbilly has a standard 32-meter terror radius. That means survivors are unable to hear the chainsaw at half the distance, which is so to A-tier add-on. Very powerful. It's as simple as that. Being able to sneak up on survivors more. Instead of being a brute force killer like he used to be, if anything, a lot of his add-ons actually help him be stealthier, which is odd. Getting into his B-tier add-ons, the Lopro chains is one of my personal favorites. Whenever you start a chainsaw sprint, you can actually break through pallets without stopping. If you hit a survivor after breaking a pallet for 5 seconds, they will not be put into the dying state, but the injured state. When the update first came out in the test build, this sucked. This was an awful add-on. Mainly because the whole damage survivors within 5 seconds was not there. In fact, it automatically, for the entire game, you wouldn't be able to put survivors into the dying state. You would only be able to injure, which made the chainsaw useless. Utterly and completely useless. This is so good now. It's a B+. I don't know, not quite A, but B+. It's one of my personal favorites, because survivors never expect it whenever they drop a pallet to try and stun you, and you chainsaw right through it to injure them. It's very, very fun. The iridescent brick. After maintaining a chainsaw sprint for 2 seconds, you gain the undetectable status effect. That means you have no terror radius. Combined with the Apex Muffler, you become so quiet. Survivors cannot hear your terror radius at all, and the Apex Muffler will have the distance that they can hear you from, making it near impossible for them to tell where the chainsaw is going to be coming from. Other B tiers would be the spike boots, which tremendously increases the steering. This allows you to do long saws way more, meaning that you this pairs well with the iridescent brick, being able to chainsaw for a long period of time without stopping. There's a lot of strategies involved with the Hillbilly. There's long saws, which you try and hit people from across the map. You go from one side to the other to long saw. You can back rev, which is getting right up behind someone and then revving and instantly putting them down. Or if you're in a loop, curve sawing, where you have a split second right before the chainsaw sprint begins and the timer ends. You're able to quickly move in a 90-degree fashion. This helps you get around those curves. It's called, I mean, that's where curve saw comes from. His last B tier add-on would be the Doom engravings. Moderately increases the chainsaw movement speed and increases the charge time as a repercussion. This increases it from, I believe, 250 to 300%. 300%, which is unheard of. He becomes the fastest killer in the entire game using this. It's so powerful. Getting into C tier add-ons. The worst version of the Doom engravings would be the Death engravings, which increases it instead of to 300% to 275%, which is still really good. Still the fastest killer in the game, just not as fast. And this is where his green add-ons come into play. His green add-ons, actually, most of them are like weaker versions of his perks. So if you want to run something other than his base perks, you can use these. In my opinion, the best of them, they all belong, just about all belong in C tier. But the best one of them, I would say, is the Leafy Mash, where if you land a chainsaw hit, you do not have a terror radius for 15 seconds. This works really well for trying to chainsaw multiple people back to back. You also would want to use the Pighouse Gloves, which decreases the heat gained when starting to rev the chainsaw. This is powerful for back revving. Being able to not overheat as much while instantly putting someone into the dying state is pretty good, but not the best. The Black Grease, which this is like a weaker version of Lightborn. Whenever a flashlight is being shown on you. Isn't that the past tense? Shown? Leave that in the comments. What's the past tense of shine? You actually, while a flashlight is shining on you, the cooldown increases. Being able to, you know, chainsaw more as a repercussion to them trying to blind you. You also would probably, the next one would be the Mother's Helpers, which after being stunned by a pallet, this is like a weaker version of Enduring, the chainsaw actually revs faster for 30 seconds after being stunned by a pallet. This is really funny when pairing it with the Lopro chains. Being able to get stunned and then just chainsaw through it insanely quickly. And then the Dad's Boots is also he's a lot of C tier, like a lot of mid tier, like okay. Which is just a weaker version of the Spiked Boots. It just allows you to moderately increases the steering. And last but not least, the low kickback chains, which whenever you bump into a obstacle during a chainsaw sprint, you actually reduce the amount of recoil you have from it. D tiers. He also has a lot of D tier add-ons. Getting into his D tier add-ons, the off-brand motor oil is which reduces the amount of noise made by the chainsaw. It's okay, I guess. The punctured muffler, which slightly increases the chainsaw's rate of cooling, which is just a significantly worse version of the Pighouse Gloves. Where is it? You have the Heavy Clutch, which decreases the collision zone, being able to bump into items left. However, it's hardly noticeable, but it works sometimes. The Junkyard Air Filter, which slightly increases the chainsaw's overheat limit. Slightly, not by much. It's the only perk that does it. If they made stronger versions, I'm sure they would be better, C or B tier, maybe. The Steel-Toed Boots, which slightly decreases the recovery time after hitting an object, which is just a way worse version of the low kickback chains. And oddly enough, this is honestly the only add-on that is weird about him. The tuned carburetor is the only... it's a purple add-on yet. It's in D tier. Moderately decreases the chainsaw's charge time. Sounds good. However, you reduce your base movement speed from 4.6, 115%, to 4.4 meters per second, or 110%. This is not good. He's all about moving quickly, and when you take that away from him, even if it's his base movement speed, he becomes way worse, in my opinion. And it's probably his third worst add-on. Then, the last D tier, D minus tier, would be Big Buckle. Decreases the tear radius by 8 meters when the chainsaw is overheating. If you let the chainsaw overheat at all, you're doing something wrong. The overheat mechanic is there to deter you, but if you're actually letting it overheat, it's not good. And it only lasts for about 20 seconds, which is about how long it takes for the overheat meter to go away. This is not good. He has one F tier add-on, and it is a lot of memes are made about this one, and it's oddly enough one of the few, I believe the only ones to be kept, the only add-ons to be kept from his previous iteration was the Doom Engravings, the Death Engravings, and this thing. I never use this, ever. The Speed Limiter. Survivors hit with the chainsaw are damaged for a single health state. Immediately. Worst add-on. Worst. That's it. That's just it. It's the same deal with the Wraith and the same deal with the Trapper. I don't know why they have one add-on like this. With the Trapper, I believe it's called the Padded Jaws, which whenever a survivor steps into a trap, it doesn't injure them. And with the Wraith, it removes the fact that you don't have a terror radius while cloaked. It just gives you the terror radius anyway. But like those, it gives you 100% more blood points for hitting people with the chainsaw. It's not good. They kept this. I cannot believe they kept this from the last iteration of the Hillbilly. This is a meme. This is a meme, and you want to meme around, use it. Otherwise, F tier, bottom tier. Getting into a perk setup. This is it right here. My ideal, perfect setup for the Hillbilly. Barbecue and chili, of course. I've already been over it, but I go over it every time. Every time you hook a survivor, you are able to see all those survivors from 40 meters away or more. And you get 100% more blood points every match. Very good. Pop goes the Weasel, because you're able to get to generators quickly and regress them by a lot, 25%. And I like running Discordance, because whenever 2 or more people are working on a generator, of course, the generator's aura lights up and it's yellow. That means you instantly know where 2 people are, and you're able to get across the map so quickly. So quickly. Allowing you to possibly get an easy chainsaw. And the kicker, my personal favorite add-on to run with him, Infectious Fright. Whenever you put a survivor into the dying state, all other survivors within your terror radius yell and give away their locations for 5 seconds. So, being a killer that can instantly put people into the dying state, you put someone into the dying state, and you instantly know where another person is, being able to put them into the dying state, and so on and so on. It is a very powerful perk that allows you to snowball really quickly with the Hillbilly. So, overall, ideal perk setup, Discordance, Pop Goes the Weasel, Barbecue and Chili, Infectious Fright. Best add-ons actually make sense. The Iridescent and Purples, except for the Tuned Carburetor, which is garbage. And that's all. Thank you guys for watching this tutorial on the Hillbilly. Now that my friends have finally gotten this game and are starting to watch my videos finally, I know you guys are watching, I know. I'm gonna finish the first 7 killers that you get to begin with. And then I'm gonna start doing the DLC killers once again. So, thank you all for watching this tutorial on the Hillbilly. I hope you guys learned something. If you have any questions, leave a comment and I'll answer them. And make sure to like and subscribe. I hope you all have a thick and fog day. Bye, guys.